Okay.
Okay, ready, going live. I'll point to you when we're live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So I'm Lois Fong Sakai from the San Diego County Fair from the photo exhibition. And next to me, we have
Amethel Sewell. Hello.
And Amethel just joined us this year as assistant coordinator, and we're very happy to come to you live from the comfort of your own home so you can participate and watch our very first online image review. So we're streaming live from the Paddock Tavern at Homegrown Fun at the San Diego County Fair. Feel free to ask questions in YouTube chat, and we'll look at them during the Q&A session at the end. So first of all, we'd like to give you a little overview of the San Diego County Fair's photo exhibition, which is the largest juried photo competition in North America. So typically we get over 4,000 images that are submitted to us. It's a two-phase judging process. The first phase is where the judges look at the categories, the pictures, and they decide whether it's an image that they'd like to see in print. And then the images that are passed through are actually printed and mounted on a 16:20 format with either a white or black mat. And then the judges will look at the prints once they're delivered and determine whether it's something that they would like to see in our gallery. With up to 1,400 images that are presented during our photo show, it is the largest photo show in North America, as we said, and it's one that most of our fairgoers say that they really enjoy. So right now we're going to do a quick introduction of our judges. Janet, would you like to say a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Yes, hello. I'm Janet Bark Photography. I've been a photographer for over 30 years now. I started in a high volume retail studio. I have an art background. I believe I'm a portrait photographer. So I think it's a highly service. I'm a customer service person first, I think, at this point. I am the current president of the Professional Photographers of San Diego County, the PPA affiliate here in San Diego. I'm about to relieve that post. I've been there for the last 4+ years. And yeah, I do some commercial work, mostly portraits, people mainly. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Janet. Welcome.
Thanks.
Next, we'll have Ev Yorobe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yorobe. I'm a local landscape photographer here in San Diego, and I've been doing photography for about 20 years now. I first learned at UCSD in college. I learned on film, learned in the darkroom, and I've since switched to digital like everybody else. And like I mentioned, I specialize in fine art landscape photography, especially San Diego stuff. And I've owned my own gallery in La Jolla going into my 4th year now.
Excellent, thanks. And our third judge today is Seth Meyer.
I've been a photographer pretty much since I was 16 years old, starting off with a local newspaper doing sports, and went to fine art photography and then commercial photography for most of the last 35 years. And then last year I moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm now catering to the fine art market, abstracts and conceptual images, things like that.
Well, welcome to our 3 panelists today. So we're going to start off by doing a quick review of the different divisions and classes that we have in our International Exhibition of Photography. We call it international because we do have people that enter from other countries. So the different divisions are, we have many color divisions. So we have landscape, we've got waterfalls, architecture, nature, and one category that's an open category that can be done in either color or black and white is cell phone photography, which actually has been a very, very popular division for people to enter. It's always a lot of fun to see how people can be creative with the camera that they always have with them. So let's move on. So black and white photography is something that a lot of people don't normally think of entering. but we don't get a lot of entries, and I find that they're usually very, very interesting. So if you do have a color photograph, consider turning it into a black and white just to see what you have. So the categories are listed there with the different classes. Documentary, class 19, that's a photo category that does have restrictions, unlike the other ones. And with the documentary or photojournalism picture, you can do cropping, you can turn it into a black and white or a color picture, but you can't do anything other than cropping the picture, pretty much. So it has to be something that is actually more like a news photo. And then we have a few categories that can be color, black and white, or digital art that can be black or white or color. So those include close-up pictures, sports, still life, and abstract. And we'll move on to the next category. So these can all be color or black and white pictures also that you see listed. And a category that's near and dear to my heart is class 31, which is film and alternative process. And so you can use film or slide. We have people that have scanned pictures on different, things on scanners, and then they manipulate those pictures. And then there's digital art, which is class 32 and 33, which is digital photographic art, which is an image that you make where you start with photos that you have taken, and then you change them, you manipulate them, or you combine them to tell a story. And then we have digital artwork and illustration. We're using digital tools like Photoshop or Illustrator. You come up with an image. And the reason we have this in there is because Photoshop uses a lot of the same tools as the digital artists. So this is how we were able to include that artwork. And then the last division that we put in is class 34, which is large prints. So that's typically images that must be larger than 20 by 24, but up to 40 inches on each side. And we do have a weight limit on those pictures. They cannot weigh more than 9 pounds because we still have to hang them on our walls. So shall we get started with the image review?
Yeah, and before we get started, we just want to thank all of the photographers who submitted images for this review. All of these images were submitted in the last couple of weeks. So it takes a lot of courage. All of these images are anonymous. We're not identifying the makers of these images, but it still takes courage to submit an image for review. So thank you to all the photographers who submitted. Before we jump in, we did try to include an image from your set of 3 if you submitted. We weren't able to include all of them, but the images in review are meant to represent as many categories as possible with different different styles and qualities as much as possible. So I also want to explain that we have not shown any of these images to the judges beforehand. Why don't we let the judges see images before review? That's because one of the elements of a strong image is its impact. Impact is the immediate reaction that a viewer has when seeing an image. So does the image capture their attention and make them feel a strong emotion or a mood? Do they feel awe? Do they feel surprise or sadness? Does it make them laugh? This is what impact is. So if your image makes the viewer feel something, that's an important part of the winning image. And often the lack of impact is one of the reasons images don't make it to tier 2, right, Lois?
Yes.
So gauging the impact of an image is really best when a judge hasn't seen an image yet. So for this reason, many competitions like ours have a protocol for not revealing submissions until the very start of judging. So on that note, let's let's begin. Judges, here's our first image.
Ev, would you like to start first? You are known as being the premier landscape photographer in San Diego County.
Sure. I like this image a lot. It speaks to me. It's very powerful. It's a what seems to be a fairly known area, but also a very dramatic scene, and captured with a fairly rare rainbow. This is the kind of thing that I usually try to photograph, and this is a great image to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think the first thing was impact. And what I like is that I keep wanting to look at the image and my eye stays in the image, which is something that's really important, that you don't wander out. I know the rainbow does that, as well as it kind of brings it into a focal point in the center. The clouds, being that they're going outward kind of makes me go back out, but then I circle back in. So I find it very dynamic to look at.
Seth, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think this is technically it could be very difficult to capture, getting the detail in the clouds and getting the full spectrum of the rainbow. So I think you did a very good job. I can see. I'm looking at this. I'd have to see it a little differently, but it could possibly crop a little bit into almost a panorama a little bit. Might have a little more impact, but it's a well done image. Some of the foreground, I could see narrowing it down a little bit. I don't know what you guys think, but it's a well done image.
All right, thank you.
Next.
So this photo would probably be entered in the birds category. Seth, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, it's a nice portrait. It's you really go to that eye, the color, that pop in the eye, that red is really nice. I mean, it's really a traditional classic portrait, well done. I like the colors. It's more muted in tone, but the black background really gives it impact to stand out. I do like all those details, the white and the feathers in the head. It's really nice there. It really brings you back because you have the white in the beak. So I keep going back from the top and circling around back to that beak. Yeah, it's a nice portrait.
All right, Janet.
I agree. I think the color harmony. Well, color. It's almost complementary colors. Blue and orange would be, but it gives some dynamic when you have those opposite colors. I agree with you, Seth. I like the way the white pops. It's kind of almost like three, where you have the, white on the bottom, the white on the beak, and the white in the feathers. So it keeps it flowing. The eye really draws me in. I like that it's an interesting crop, that it's over to one side versus, I like that the maker did that. They pushed the image to the side versus having it centered. But it works because, you have the bird is going into the negative space. I really enjoy looking at this. It's great.
I agree as well. It's a very nice image. The eye really pops, so it brings your attention to it first. So I first look at the eye, and then it brings me around to the rest of the photo. Very sharp on the face and around the eye, and with the feathers on the head. It does seem to be a little soft around the body. I can't tell though. I'm looking on a computer screen here. But I do like the composition as well, how they cropped it, and how they like Janet mentioned, the negative space with the eye looking into the negative space. So I do like it. I like the colors as well.
All right, thank you.
And one more thing. Oh, I was going to go back. I don't want to take too much time, but and a little bit on the contrast of the body. I could see if it was a little bit darkened on the bottom left-hand part to bring your eye, maybe not the white part, bring out the white, but darkening a little bit more the shadow, so your eye just really roams around that image. I think would give it a little more impact too.
Okay, thank you. So this image, I might imagine, might possibly be entered under black and white architecture. Ev, would you like to take this one first?
Sure. It's a good image. I like that it's kind of dark and dramatic, which is capturing my attention. It's kind of giving a bit of power to it. I like the long exposure effect in the sky. I don't know if it's a good image. I don't know if it's very powerful to me. I don't know if it's speaking to me that much, but I do like it. It's still a very well done image.
Seth, what are your thoughts?
Again, it's hard to tell in this angle. Yeah, I like, the architecture is great. The building looks a little bit like it's skewed backwards. If you can't get that perspective a little bit forward. Also, that palm tree on the right-hand side, and there's a little bit of on the left-hand side. Also, there's a little bit of a tree trunk. I like to, when I look at an image, every single inch of that frame needs to count. The processing might be a little bit overly processed, a little overly converted. There's a little glowing around the edges of the tree, the palm tree up there. But it has impact right away. I think that a little bit of tweaking, maybe again tone down the conversion of the black and white, I think would help this a lot too. But it's a great building to work with. Yeah, it brings you right in. So,
Now, if I may, Seth, you mentioned that sometimes people overprocess pictures. What does that mean?
Well, especially when you convert to black and white, depending on what you're using, there's so many ways to convert to black and white. There's a tendency to, if you're using it could be even, I'm trying to think some of the raw conversions, but again, depending on how you do it, your edges from your transitions from white to blacks, they get like the blacks get muddied, they get muddied up. You'll have like a glow around the edges of objects, like we see like some of the tree leaves or sometimes the edges of the buildings, and it's just a little bit too much. You could go a lot more subtle on it and not have that range of tones. Get a little more detail in the blacks, especially on a long exposure. If this is the original backdrop, you use a lot of texture and clarity. Sometimes too much clarity, especially with clouds, tends to lose the positive effect of a long exposure. Well, long exposure, it's nice to have a very smooth, calming feel to that, and motion to those clouds. But it gets a little, like I say, blocky and choppy when it's overly done.
All right. Thank you, Seth, for that very detailed explanation. Janet, you have anything you'd like to add?
Just what they said. I like the overall impact. I think the sky and the tree distracted me a little bit from I love looking at the building and drawing into the arches. So I think, I'm not sure again, if the background was dropped in either, that, maybe a calmer sky would draw your focus to the building. That would be my one advice. Maybe if it was dropped in, not the dramatic sky, but I love that the perspective of the rest of the image, but maybe straightening out again, like Seth said. But yeah,
all right.
I think.
Well, thank you. We'll move on to the next image.
By the way, those bells were important in that too. In that building, the bells on the top of the towers, there's about 5 of them there, and we're losing them a little bit. You don't see them as well. In a bigger print, you might be able to see them better, but that would be more of a focus too, to bring your eye into.
Okay. Thanks for that observation. We'll move on to the next one. And I would believe this would probably be best suited for the category called still life. So, Janet, let's start with you this time.
I mean, great impact. I love colors. I think I'm drawn, it's pleasing to look at. It's an interesting shape. It looks pretty symmetrical. I don't feel off looking at it, which is, they're going corner to corner really well. Placement of color. I'm traveling around the image and I'm ending back in the middle, but then I'm going around. So I think it's great for what it is. I think it's really fun to look at.
Ev, your thoughts?
It's a very creative image. I like it. It's a very simple thing that they use, but they've made a great image out of it using just shapes and colors, and the way they lined everything up. And like Jenna mentioned, it does seem to be very symmetrical. Can't see anything off of that. It brings my eyes all the way around throughout the photo. I like it. It's great. Well done.
Seth?
Yeah, I agree. It has a lot of impact. As soon as that came up on the screen, it just popped right out. This would be, good commercial applications. It really, has a really good commercial feel. Not to be picky, because but a couple little things. There's just a couple little and they're probably not dust spots per se, but on my eye, I notice these things. It drives me crazy. There's on that green or the dark green on the upper left, there's a little spot there on some of the magenta ones. Just when you're doing something like this, because it's so symmetrical and it looks like the person took so much time to really get it exactly right, just a couple little white spots, little flecks could really, just help it a little bit. That's something when I'm judging, I see these little things and they kind of take things down a notch, because you spent a lot of time on putting everything together, but just little things that could have been cleaned up a little bit.
All right. Thank you, judges. Okay. Let's start with Ev.
That's a nice image. It's the comet. So very recognizable, well-known event that we all know. But the foreground seems very soft and maybe a lot of noise reduction used. There seems to be some maybe like that grid distortion in the sky that I'm seeing. I'm wondering if this is a cell phone photo, but the subject is good. The technicals of the photo may be a little weak though.
I will say for this image, it's much sharper on the screen than what's being projected. So take that into account.
Okay.
All right. Seth, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's a nice image. I think that there's a little bit of edge sharpening that could have been cleaned up a little bit. Again, those little details. I think, when it comes to like these kind of landscapes, I do like when I see ones that were, I hate to use the word, painted with light, but you can do that in Lightroom or Photoshop and so forth, where you're bringing your eye to, you're lightning and dodging and burning basically various areas to kind of bring things in where you want to go. But yeah, I like the format. I like the composition of it. It's well done. It looks nice. I could say there could be some improvements on the rocks, especially, highlighting and darkening some areas to give it some depth. I think that looks a little flat on my end too, but it could just be, again, on the screen that we're looking at. So, but yeah, it's a nice image.
Okay. Janet?
Yeah, I'm right where they were. That was my first thought. What Ev said about the, like over sharpen, it looked a little soft. And then I just brightened my screen thinking that might, show me a little more. So I also was thinking burning in some of the areas to give it some more, depth, like you said, Seth. But otherwise composition, I love it. I think the cropping's great. I like that there's little light peaks. My eye, after I looked at it, I found other little, like the valley beyond, like I wanted to go and see what's back there. So I like that there was that added element. Like without that, you just have the rocks, but that there's that other layer. And I like the trees in the front. So.
All right. Thank you, judges. And we didn't mention, but this would probably go into night, and it could possibly be in one of the landscape categories for season also. But the first category that kind of comes to mind for me is night.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Seth, let's start with you this time.
Trying to see where's the frame. The frame, I'm looking where it ends. Is that it's over by the, okay, over here on the right. Yeah, this is would be under, I guess, in documentary photography. And yeah, it has a lot of impact. I mean, you really go, obviously you're focusing on this person on the left. And, it's really interesting, seeing the, people shopping and the jewelers and, all that, the slice of life that's really happening, I think it does have a lot of impact. And also I like the tones, the black and white going back where you have you have the light in front, but then your columns and there's a white all the way in the back. So your eye does go back and then comes around again. Yeah, I like it. I think it's well done. And also the Starbucks or whatever that is on or the jeweler or whatever that face is on the top left above the person, down on the bottom. It's interesting. Yeah.
All right, Janet.
Yeah, I agree with what I didn't even see the Starbucks because I'm kind of low and then I go in and I come back. Yeah, you just think about where this is and why she's hanging out down there and what's happening, where they are. And it's a great documentary storytelling image. I think, is he looking towards camera? So you kind of have that eye connection with him. No, I like it. I like that that's darker on the edges too. I like the toning that the maker did with the image.
Ev?
I agree. It's a very impactful image. It's great street photography. Your eye goes to the front corner subject first, especially with how the light and the dark is done. A lot of depth in the image, tells a great story. I can't tell if it's natural or if it's through dodging and burning. I feel like it's maybe a little too much unless it is natural, but I can't tell from the photo with the darkness and the lightness, but still a very impactful photo.
So a few of you have mentioned dodging and burning. Ev, can you elaborate on what dodging and burning is and what that?
I mean, it's basically coming down to lightening and darkening parts of the photo. You can use it to highlight subjects or take eye away from certain areas of the photo. And it's used well here, especially if it's natural light, but it seems like maybe it's extreme if it was done in post-processing.
Okay. So category that this photo could be possibly in is documentary. If it were in documentary, the only thing that the person could do would be cropping and putting a vignette on it. If it were, it could also possibly be entered under black and white people pictures. And if it were entered in black and white people, then there would be no restrictions on the editing. So, all right. Thank you. We'll move on to the next image. Seth, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, it jumped out at me. It was great because I was like, okay, what am I looking at? Like a surreal image. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like they're doing a flip on there and doing something pretty creative. I'm not sure what those lines are in the bottom of that reflection or whatever. I see that going across, but there's horizontal lines that are going across. But yeah, it looks like there might be a little overexposure in a few spots, in the highlight spots. It's hard to tell, and that's one of the problems with when we look at it on the screen in the first round of judging too, is that we have to make the assumption how it's going to come out in a print, when I look at this, again, it's very creative, interesting image. But there could be some technical issues trying to print this. But again, it could just be, what I'm looking at right now might be a little more bright than what you're seeing on Lois's and Phil's screen. But yeah, it has a lot of impact. It's very interesting.
Okay. Ev?
I agree. It's very impactful. It's very creative. Well done. Looks to be like maybe a digital art photo or digital art in general, which isn't my expertise, but still I can appreciate it. I do find the lines a little distracting, and there seems to be maybe some like digital distortion in the background that's also distracting to me. Not sure if that was on purpose or not, but otherwise very well creative done.
Okay. Janet, your thoughts?
I agree. I kind of saw the lines at first, and I think that's maybe because, right, we go to the technical. I mean, we get the impact, then you go to technical, and then you're like, okay, I don't know what that is. And so you try to give the maker the benefit of the doubt. You want to think, well, what was I always think of what's the purpose, leaving something in for a reason. I don't know that the lines have a purpose. And I agree with some of the artifacts, like there looks like there's shapes that I'm seeing above as well. And if there's a purpose and, maybe we don't understand it, that's great. But I really think to think about intent when creating something. But otherwise, yeah, it's unique. Very unique.
And I would surmise that a photo like this, if it were entered, would probably go into one of the digital art and illustration or digital photographic art.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this photo, I might imagine, could either be in portraits or it could be in informal people. So Janet, let's start with you.
So first impression is impact with color and, just the way she's looking into the camera and her expression. So there's emotion. That's the first thing. And then technically, if you're doing portrait, we always say you have control. So she's pretty flat lit. Maybe if you were taking a portrait and you had control of the subject, I would suggest maybe turning her where you can get some shape and shadow to the face, which adds a little more drama and depth. In post-production, you could, burn in or vignette the image to draw the focus into her face. But I like the tight crop. I like that we're kind of hit with her. And I think the expression again kind of fits that tight crop and that intensity.
Jeff, let's move on to you.
Agree with Janet, a very impactful image, interesting subject, great color, but also the lighting does feel flat. Like it feels like it may have been photographed in broad daylight, which kind of just gives you that flat look. It takes away a bit from it. But otherwise, like very interesting subject. Again, I like the colors.
Seth?
Yeah, I agree. I like the necklace. I just because the shot that when you look at the face and the makeup and the colors and the vibrancy, but then you see a normal face, a normal portrait on that necklace. I mean, it really. I keep going back down to that, and it does have a lot of impact. And I absolutely agree. This image with the amount of makeup and the colors and what went into what they were trying to achieve. Themselves, the subject, it needs impactful lighting, or it needs even in post-production if we had to, if it didn't have the lighting, just more highlights and shadows, and the color balance might be a little off there too. It's hard to tell because there's, otherwise everything else, the composition, the headshot, the impacts of the image is good. It's just that flatness that could have improved that image.
All right, thank you.
That's cool.
So I'm not sure what category this would be right now, whether it might be photojournalism, documentary, or digital. What are your thoughts, Seth?
Yeah, I'm not so sure because I mean it looks like there's some obviously looks like there's post-production then besides the conversion of black and white and leaving the flames in the back, in color. But the way it looks, it almost looks like it was merged onto that clouds in the sea. But that would be a natural probably stream, I would imagine, that flow coming out of the back. But there's something that looks, artificial about it. So, I would think that it more into the, some more of the, I don't want to say digital category, but one of the other conceptual categories. But it does, I love the composition is great. It's strong. It's got a lot of impact. Even with this, it's a little flat also, kind of like the last image. It really could use some pop and definition. Again, that's where the dodging and burning, you can you add depth by adding, darkening a little side, the shadow areas and raising up the highlights a little bit on this, especially on this plane, on that, But you know, I like this horizontal composition too. I like the you know, a lot of things about it. Again, it looks like, I don't know if it's over processing on the edge of that, or if it was stripped out. I'm not really sure, but it does have that artificial feel to it.
Okay.
In YouTube chat, PJ suggests all things mechanical, or
All things mechanical.
Yeah, there you go.
That would work. Janet, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Seth. I almost think I actually believe the sky. I do. I just think that it might have been really cropped in. Like I'm it just, you know, from the, you know, looking at the details of the plane, I feel like it probably was a, you know, much larger image, and then they've cropped it. That's what I feel looking at it. I agree with the depth. I think I like that it's kind of this soft image overall, and that you see the little glow. But I just want that plane to have a little more depth and detail and structure is what I'm feeling. But overall, it's pleasing to look at for sure with the smoke and the.
F?
A very unique image. I like it. I also agree that you can't tell, like some of seems a little artificial. You can't really tell from this though, but like a unique shot, something very hard to capture. So I take that into account. But because, like Jenna mentioned, it's probably is very cropped, so it's very soft, a lot of noise. So the technicals, it's a little weak, and I think that would be a problem if this went into print. But otherwise, very great capture of this unique moment.
All right, thank you. So this image could possibly be entered in one of the seasons. So, Ev, let's start with you this time.
It's a nice, calming image. I like the reflection, good composition with the boats leading towards the sunset and the colors. It's not the most impactful image to me, but the calmness of it, nice colors, good composition. So it's still a very good photo.
Janet?
What you said, I love that the perspective of the boats leads me in. I feel like the building's crooked, and it could just be me. And I just feel like I just want to straighten it, the image, or maybe it's because the horizon line is going with the lake. So did you see that? Does that, or no? You're the expert.
Well, no,
I feel like it's.
I had our faces blocking that part of the image. So
Okay. I just feel like I want to straighten it a tad. And I don't know if
see that a little bit.
That's what.
An illusion of how the image is cropped, though.
It could, right. So that's my first, and this is, question for you guys, could you, in post-production, so it seems like it's pretty much the good time of day, maybe a few, minutes later would have even given more drama, but could you add more contrast or would that help this image in post-production, or do you think waiting more when taking the image would have helped? Like, what would have been the right thing to do?
If you're a landscape photographer, what are your thoughts?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, I was asking you guys. What do you think? Because I feel like a little more contrast would give it a little
something
more.
to pop this a little bit more.
Right.
Agree with the little bit more contrast. Maybe even just play with the whites a little bit and the blacks, and just pop that color a little bit more.
All right, Seth?
Yeah, I do like that it really brings you into the image, and there's that white snow in this sort of center right. So my eye goes there. At first I thought it was a waterfall, but if you crop this as a square, and you crop out the left side into the second boat, that little boat, get rid of that, and come in a little bit towards that oar. And I think I like, so you're cropping up to the mountain right before, going a little bit of the trees. It seems to have a little bit more impact to me. When I crop that in, your eye seems to go around, and you're getting the reflection, the light reflection in the water, so you're kind of bringing your eye in all directions. You got to be careful with these kind of images. They're tough because you've got that beautiful, yellow, sunset or whatever it is, the sun coming through. So that is hard to get the detail. You did a good job of that too. And I like that mix of clouds and colors here. You got the blues and the yellows works really well. But then all of a sudden on the bottom, like kind of what everybody else said, it's a little bit flat there. So, and that wouldn't take a lot of post-production. It could take a little bit, having that board where you're walking on the right corner being so bright too. That's not an important part of the picture. So that could be toned down, a little boardwalk, and then maybe vignette a little bit, burn in a little bit on the some of those mountains to get a little more depth on there too. The more blacks on the shadow side of those mountains, I think would give it a lot more impact too. And with dodging and burning, I like you could do little things like oars or little sticks and parts of the boats to really just bring your eye, where you want it to. That's how I like to think about dodging and burning, is that you're basically taking the viewer's eye where you want to go and really like taking them by the hand and taking them through the photograph. So yeah, it's got a lot of potential. I think that you could do a lot with this image. There's so much you can do because you have a lot of good detail in this image, which allows you to do a lot more post-production.
Being a fly on the wall when the judges are hard at work, one of the comments that we do hear a lot of also is that people need to not think that just because they have everything in a photo that they can't take away some of the picture to make it a better crop and to have more impact and make it a stronger picture. So I know a couple of you guys had mentioned that with this picture also. So that's a nice reminder that all photographers should consider making a photo smaller to have more of an impact. So thank you. So I might surmise that this picture might be in the bird category. Janet, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's awesome. It's an awesome, beautiful owl. You're drawn to the eyes and then the beak and the shape of the face. I feel like it's a little tight, but I would like maybe more space to enjoy the bird, or maybe a vertical crop. Technically, the feathers are a little blown around the face. So if you have detail to burn the feathers in a little bit, I think there's like a green background. I kind of like that. Possibly vignetting a little bit more. No, it's amazing that you got this beautiful portrait.
F?
Yeah.
It's a very fun image. I like it a lot. So, the eyes just bringing it to you. I wish they were a little bit sharper. Again, I can't tell from just looking at my computer, but I think that would be maybe a weakness when bringing this into print. But otherwise, a very fun image. I like it a lot.
Seth?
That could be a slipper. A fun slipper. That's the flip. It's fun. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is pretty funny. Like you say, it looks funny. It's in a good way, a positive way. But it could be like a thumb puppet or something. But there's some technical things there that, from a judging standpoint, that would really, unfortunately, hurt this image. So here it is. You have this impact. This probably using a long telephoto lens to get that shot. And then, but with the highlights, when the highlights are blown like that, they just do not print well. It doesn't print well. And also that softness around the depth of field, or it's hard, especially with these telephotos, to really get something that's a super cat sharp. It's hard to do that. But so it's got a lot of potential. I mean, it's funny. It's it was one of those ones. I don't know if we could pass it or not pass it, because of the technical versus the impact of the eyes and the face, and So I think if you could work on that, especially when you do have an area that's, say, maybe soft, like the bottom feathers, to, if they become a little bit distracting, again, that's where you want to darken. If you darken it away, your eye always goes to the brightest part of a photograph. I don't care what kind of photograph, from portrait, landscape, and no matter what. It's always going to go to the brightest part of that photograph. So, you know, you have to think, what is it? And here would be the eyes normally. You don't want those eyes to really pop, you know. And then, but you've got this bottom part with that blown out area, and then the blurred part of the bottom. So I would again just eliminate that a little bit by darkening it. So that way you're forcing the viewer to not maybe pay attention to that area and looking more at the eyes and the nose and the face and the impact of that.
Thanks for that feedback.
Can I add
Janet?
one more thing, Lois? Yeah, I mentioned the cropping, and I wanted to explain what now I'm seeing what that was, and it's really having the eyes as kind of a target, like a bullseye. I mean, so like the eyes are in the middle of the image, typically on a portrait, and we're going to call this a bird portrait. You want the eyes in the upper third. So I would be curious if you had more body to pull back, put the eyes in the upper third, even cropping into I don't know how that would look cropping into the head, maybe not, but I think it would have more impact when you bring the eyes into the upper part of the image versus having, kind of dead center. So that's, I would play with that if you have the space to do that.
All right, thank you. Okay, this might possibly be entered in color architecture maybe, or it could be seasons, but my first instinct is color architecture.
You still have cityscape, don't you also?
Oh yeah, so architecture and cityscape are the same category.
Can I judge that one?
All right, Seth, let's have you start.
Yeah, this says a lot of impact. It's very interesting. It's one of those images that you can kind of stay and look, and really, like take your time with it. Some images you look at it and you're gone in 3-4 seconds. Here you want to kind of like see what's going on and look at everything in there. I think it captured the detail well, which is hard to do, in this kind of an image, between the cliffs and the dark rocks and then the highlights from the lights. So I think it did well technically on that. I like the contrast of the purple in the sky in the background. Yeah, I mean, it has a lot of impact. I like it.
Ev, let's go to you.
It's a beautiful image, very impactful, great subject. Seems to be sharp all throughout the image. And like Seth mentioned, you can kind of just get lost in this image, looking throughout all of it. And everywhere you look, it's a nice, sharp, clean image. Seen a little bit of haloing against some of the buildings, so maybe clean that up if this were to go into print. And then maybe bring up some of the shadows on the bottom a little bit just to keep it a little more balanced. Other than that, that's a great image.
Thanks, Ev. Janet?
Yeah, I agree. I like that we can see details in the hills. It didn't go to black. That's really pleasing. Maybe if you can bring some of the highlights down, there's a couple spots like the very top of the image and then some of the center spots. But yeah, I would say that would be the only thing. I really, really enjoy it. I think the colors are beautiful and the detail, like you said, throughout looks great.
All right, thank you. So this would, I imagine, would probably be in color portraits of people. Janet, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The colors, love the play on the lips and the hair color. The continent outlined around her eye. Yeah, I'm really fascinated with. I mean, I want to stay and look at this portrait. I think the handling of the skin, the retouching was really superbly done. Again, I feel like I think I go to that where the eyes are dropping down. Like I'm so wanting to push the image higher to get the eyes higher. So I don't know. And I've always heard that if you're going to crop into the hair, like either crop into the hair or show everything. So that that's the only part that really distracts me. I like her hand. I think it's nice. I mean, hands are tough. You know, we always want to bend the wrist and see the side of the hand. I mean, we see a little bit of the palm. I mean, maybe that would be the one area, burn the hand down a little bit. And my eye goes to the hand. I want to stay on her face. I don't mind the hot spot on her shoulder for some reason. If I'm retouching an image, I probably tone that down, but I like that there's like that shine. Yeah, otherwise it's beautiful.
All right, Seth?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's very well done. Lighting's really good. Your catch light, your fill light, you have a kicker going off to the side, keeping on the fingers on the left hand side, which is kind of nice touch right there. Especially like hair, wigs, and that kind of stuff. You know, they're very not that easy to make it look good. And you did a really good job there. Makeup's really good. Retouching's really good. Yeah, it's really well done. Again, depending on what the purpose was for this, if you're, what you're emphasizing, yeah, cropping a little bit more, like Janet said, like on the top of the hair, because you can crop down just a little bit and really force that eyes to really jump out even more. But I mean, it works well the way it is. Yeah, no, it's really well done. I agree about the highlight, by the way, on the shoulders. I was thinking, do I like that? Don't like that? Because again, your eye does go to that, and is that important part, but it kind of is. It's almost like I wouldn't get rid of it, but yeah, like Janet mentioned, maybe tone it down just a little bit, because it brings your eye back down. Like you have the highlight on the arm, and then it brings you up to that, and then goes to the eyes. But you do want to go right to the eyes first. That's more important than the highlight on the shoulder. So, but yeah, it's well done.
F, any thoughts?
Very interesting. Great shots. Interesting subject. Well lit. Tastefully edited. But I also agree with the cropping on the hair. I either want one or the other, like see all of it or crop it out. And maybe even see if this image works as a vertical photo versus horizontal. There seems to be a lot of dead space on the end, and then we're cutting that hair off. So I don't know, try that out, see if that works out, if there's enough of the image to work with that way.
All right, thank you. So this image, I'm not sure exactly how they made it. It could be possibly like a black and white scenic / landscape picture, or it could be film, an alternative process, or it could be a digital image. So let's start with you, Seth.
I like it a lot. I love the composition. I love that panorama. It's it's interesting. Again, landscapes. It's sometimes difficult to get out of the zone of creating a landscape. We all think of a traditional landscape. So when you do something that's out of that zone, it looks like there's a texture screen over the image, and and you don't have to know what everything is when it's more of a conceptual image like this landscape versus a traditional landscape. You don't need to know. And also, you can get away with, like, there's maybe some shadow detail that's not there. But you know what? It's fine. It actually works for this kind of image. That's the beauty of work, let's say conceptual landscapes, if that's the right word that I'm using. It just has a lot of impact. Yeah, I really like this a lot. Yeah, it's nice.
Janet?
Yeah, I agree. I'm really drawn by the image and, curious on the process. I feel that it's storytelling, and I can see that the maker took time to create this story. And I feel there's lots of drama and texture and fun things to look at. And it's really, really interesting. I'm really fascinated with it. I think it's great.
F?
I like it a lot as well. Very interesting. Like they mentioned, you can tell that the creator went through a lot, and with every little detail with this, going through all of it just to create that impact. And it makes me want to know more about it, even though I probably shouldn't, but that's a good sign of it, that I want to know more about this, how they did this and why they did this.
Right.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next image. So I would guess that this photo might be entered in our best friend? Janet.
He's so cute. He's like, why am I doing this for my birthday? Why? All right. So you have the impact, he's looking, I'm saying, well, maybe, but the dog is looking at the camera. The eyes are sharp. Looks like pretty sharp on the nose. So I look at it like, so you got the shot, and then always start thinking about, well, what else could I do to make it better? So, removing the soap in the background. And then if you're, photoshopping, cleaning up little details around the tub so your eye doesn't go to the tile, cleaning the image up, maybe some like spots on his nose. I would just start taking this and think about what you can do to make this even better. Maybe cropping it even closer. Again, like portraits, he's kind of on the bottom half of the image. So maybe cropping in, even an extreme crop so that he's taking up more of the frame. I don't think you need the top and the sides as much. Yeah. And then maybe color harmony. I'm feeling like there's maybe a little color balance issue with that, but fun image.
Ev?
It's a cute, fun image. I love dogs, so that gets me right away. But also agree in that there's a lot to be cleaned up here. Maybe even throw a vignette on that, just kind of focus just on the dog. Get that bottle out of there, clean up all the little dirt spots. There's a little shadow on the left side that just bothers me. You can easily get rid of that. But yeah, clean this up, and it's a fun, impactful image.
Seth?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a fun image. That the first thing I saw was that soap shampoo in the back. Now, if you had the shampoos pouring on the dog, now that would have been kind of fun too. But it takes away from the subject matter. We know it's a tub, so and you don't need that in the background. But it's cute, it's fun. It got some of the burned out edges of the tub. Again, take away from the dog. Like I said earlier about the highlights, you're going to go to the brightest areas, and happens to be nothing important or that relevant to the photograph. So yeah, a little cleaning up, a little dodging and burning and whatever, and really focusing like a spotlight almost on the dog. And the color balance is a little bit off, but correct that, and I think would be a real fun image that jumps out at you. You want it to jump out, and that's what you could do that with a little post processing.
So two of you have mentioned color balance. Janet and Seth, would either one of you like to elaborate on what color balance is?
Go ahead, Janet.
All right. Well, it's so funny. I have a dog and he's by the back door, and I'm trying to text the family like, my dog might start barking. So color balance is accurate color. And one of the ways you can do that, now you could use the dropper tool in Lightroom, and the tub, if it's a pure white tile, it may color balance, or the hat, but you could use a gray card or something in your image, which is an easy way for Lightroom to color balance. So it's really just having images that are accurate color based on the lighting that you're using. So that's how I would color balance an image.
And every light source you use, depending if it's a fluorescent light, a tungsten light, natural light, daylight, if it's morning or afternoon, has a color that tints the photograph. And so that's what's happening here. The lights, the natural lights on the wall that you're using or whatever it might be, they have a certain tint. So it's a matter of, now there's technical correctness to light balancing, but then there's also creative use of light balancing. So you might want to turn the whole thing like a blue color if you wanted to use it for creative purposes. But when it's close like this, in an image that looks like it should be color balanced, then you want to go for the technical color balance and make the white should be more white. The backs, should be more of a neutral black, shouldn't be like a tinge to it. There's more like a yellowish kind of feel to this that's a little not accurate, but a little green almost in the shadow kind of area. But a color balance is important. You have to use it both, like I say, both technically and creatively.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll move on to the next image. So I'm not sure if this would be in a season or architecture or a large print? So Janet, let's start with you.
Right. So I like that I like the interesting use of the crop and, making a panoramic. I like that there's, lots of color. The colors are really vibrant. Some things to make it better. I know we always hear time of day. It's hard to take a great impactful image, with bright sun. So some of the ground and the buildings seem a little hot. I could suggest toning it down a little bit to get more detail in the highlights. The trees seem a little bit, I know the word crunchy, they seem like the darks, so maybe the blacks are just a little too black. Yeah, I think those were some of the areas I would suggest working on.
Ev?
It's a nice, simple, clean image. Like Janet mentioned, creative use of the cropping there. But it seems a little soft. And if this were to go into print, I think that could be an issue. And again, the lighting, there's nothing too impactful about that part of it. You can tell from the shadows in the house that it was probably close to noon with the sun right above. So again, it's a well done, simple image, but maybe not super impactful for going into print for the next round.
Seth?
I would like to see this image in black and white. Sometimes when you do have like a blue sky and the time of day where it's, and especially since you have, the shadows are so dark, they almost might have almost like a silhouette kind of feel to them in black and white, and then also there's a little bit of a hot, it's sort of blown out being a little too light on some of the that building on the left side. There's some light areas that could be darkened down a little bit. But again, I would, if you want, look at it, convert it to black and white, and take a look. And when you go to black and white, depending if you're using Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever tool, a lot of them have the ability to shift different colors. So you could shift the greens. So even when it's in black and white, you could shift the greens lighter or darker. You could shift the yellows lighter and darker. You can, shift the reds and so forth, magentas and cyans. So you could really change that impact. And I think this would, it possibly could look really well in black and white. I like the horizontal. I like the panoramas. It makes it interesting. It's an interesting composition. But in the daylight like this and the light without shadows, it's kind of like it doesn't have the impact that it might have. So yeah, I would try black and white.
But that's a good reminder for us to consider black and white. So, all right, let's move on to the next image. Janet, let's start with you. And,
wow. So
I would surmise this could be in sports, but it could possibly be in documentary, or it could be informal people.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling the documentary aspect. Like the maker had the use of the wide angle lens, so you're right there and you feel like you're right in the middle of this. Yeah, it's definitely caught the action. I love the expression on his face. The image, seems a little hot. I can see that, that there's flash that's been used. I would bring it down a little, so I know you can do that for documentary, right? You can change the exposure. Is that correct? Like they could, Lois, if it's documentary, could they?
Well, supposedly in documentary, you're only able to do cropping.
Okay.
And a vignette.
Okay. So then maybe if it's in another category, people, I would tone it down just a little. It seems a little hot. The highlights are a little bright. Yeah, and maybe just a little vignette, but I think it's got great impact, great storytelling.
Ev?
Agree. Great impact, great image. It tells a great story. Good composition with where the subject matter is. Again, yeah, the light is a little bright, but I think that adds to it almost. If it were to be a documentary photo, makes it feel more real, more gritty. Just kind of a little more realistic. So yeah, I like it a lot.
And Seth.
Yeah, when it came on the screen, it just, jumped right at me, with the, trying to figure out what it was, what's going on here. What are these guys in the background, what they're doing. But so there's a story, that's being told, and the angle is great. It just has, it does have a lot of impact. Technically, again, if it's not documentary or even just a vignette, I mean, maybe a vignette is that top right hand side and the bottom left is not that important. So I mean, it might be able to improve it that way. I would experiment with stuff like that. It depends on what category you're in. But vignetting is, again, that's easy to do, and again, you can use the burn tool a little bit. But yeah, no, it wants me to investigate what's going on here. I'm interested in the story behind this. Like, what is it? What's happening here?
Thank you. And I need to make a correction here. So under documentary, it must be a single image, not altered to change the content. Cropping, dodging, and or burning of the image is allowed.
Okay. Yeah.
So I stand corrected.
Burning the highlight on the feet and so forth, and the corners, and I think that would really draw it in even more, because you have those lines, those ropes and stuff that really, bring everything in too. So by having that light dark there, your eye would just go even more impact than it has now.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next image. And I would surmise this would probably be in one of the digital categories.
Not the animals.
Seth, let's start with you.
Oh yeah, no, this is great. I mean, every part of that frame is been, obviously thought out. That's what's great about this, because you're doing something from your mind, and you're just, it's really, really well done. I mean, it's tons of impact. I mean, again, there's another one of those images you could probably, every time you look at it, you're going to find a few more birds that you didn't see the first time, or a few more other little things and details. I mean, it's a great image.
Janet.
I agree, Seth. I think that's what makes it so fun. And I love that it's at an angle, but then there's the angles coming from both sides. So you have the leading lines that bring you right to the subject, and the subject has the lightest, like you said earlier, your eye goes to the lightest part of the image, and that's his face. And then you kind of go over to the cape, but then you're jumping up to the, lightning and the birds right connecting with that. But I think the highlights on the sculpture in the front, that's, like when we talk about depth in all the images, the maker really did create lots of depth and texture with all the light to dark shadows. I think it's wonderful.
Ev?
I also agree, really well done. A lot of detail, a lot of work went into this, you can tell. Agree with the depth, the way the main character and the birds are brought out through the light and in the background in the dark. And the extreme angle, Dutch angle, works really well. I like it a lot.
All right, thank you. Next image. I would guess that this might be in color architecture, perhaps. So Seth, let's start with you.
I like the motion. I like the staircase, the light, the way the play on light, the way it goes up and spirals around. It's interesting when it comes to judging in the architectural, category. Sometimes, we've had, judges that's what they do for a living, is architectural photography. So when you look at something from an architectural professional vision versus, let's say, a creative, I don't know if that's not creative vision, but when you look at it from purely, maybe not as an architectural photographer, and you look at it from a creative vision, then you have to really look at these things in different ways, is what I'm trying to say. So if it was from an architectural photographer, there might be issues with, again, the angle, the perspective, and the way things are. It's not as accurate portrayal of what it is. But from a creative perspective, I think it has impact. I mean, I would have probably darkened that little left-hand corner a little bit with those lights. your eye goes back and forth to that, and I almost wish I saw more of that, because that's like an interesting architectural feature, is those stained glass windows, but I don't get enough of them. So it's almost like either I want more, or I want less. I can't tell. But so again, I maybe darken that down. There's a little bit of the blue coming through against the orange, which has an interesting impact too. So again, it depends on the perspective. If this is entered into the architectural category, I know the judges would kind of have some debates about, again, between the accuracy versus the, the creative side of it.
All right, F?
It's a very interesting photo. I love the lines. I love the shapes it creates. Great lighting on it. It's impactful in that way. But I agree with Seth with the window. I want to see more of that as well, because that's where the light is coming from. And maybe the technicals in the photo, it seems like it might be a little soft in parts, and that could be a problem going into print as well. But very interesting lines and angle.
Janet?
Yep, I'm right there with the window. And I think that just makes me think of center of interest, so it kind of pulls you from the stairs and the spiral. So I agree. I feel like, so thinking of center of interest or, purpose. And I agree. I think having more of that or cropping it out. Like, I would be curious to see how this would look as, maybe a pano, or maybe, really cropped in, and I would play with the crop. I think I do love the colors. I love the drama of it and the movement, like Seth said. I think it's just that my eyes go into that window, and I agree. That's the only thing that I like. The blue. I like the blue light, blue and orange.
Right, thank you.
Colors.
So I would imagine that this would probably be in color photographs of people that are portraits, formal portraits. So Janet, let's start with you.
Okay, so fun. I love the mood. The mood is done well with her pose and the hand and the background and what she's sitting on. So portrait. So that's, something I've been doing a long time. And, there's portrait rules, and I feel that it's fine to break rules with intent. So one of the things, I don't mind, when you're looking, the drama of her face looking off to the side, but you do lose her right eye. And when you don't have a light in the eye, a catch light, which can be used with intent, but there's something about lack of catch light or having light in the eyes that gives even that more, you're more looking into their soul. Like, you have more impact when the eyes are lit. So lighting a portrait, I'm always focusing on where the light is getting them in the eyes, is making sure we can expose that. So that being said, then, we're looking at her face. I love that. And then we're drawn down to her chest. I think if you had burned her chest in a little bit, I like that there's shape there, but seeing, you want the focus to be on the face. So the lighter part, like, if you can, and one of the things you can do is flip the image upside down, and where does your eye go? So some of the hotter spots are like the fur she's sitting on, the background, her hair, and her chest. So I would burn those in so that when we're looking at the image, we're brought into her face. Maybe cropping it in even tighter. I think there's some parts of the bottom that are lighter that we don't need, maybe cropping right under the knee. You never want to crop through the joint, but maybe just a little bit higher to bring the focus back to her. Yeah, I think that would help the image a lot. Little vignette.
Right, Seth?
Yeah, I agree with Janet. There's again, not knowing, what the title or what the purpose, exactly is, sometimes it, makes it sometimes a little more difficult to judge our response versus what the photographer's intent was. There's a few little things, that I clean up, like there's a hair in the eye that, that sometimes you want hair in the eye, but I think it should either be more or less. There's a few that, that could be cleaned up. It's not that difficult to get it out. and the catch lights and something like this would really add impact. If the light was on the camera left side, it's called short lighting, and coming from the other side, add a little more shadow on this side when you have that keeper light in the back. Also I think, I think it would lighten the teeth a little bit more on the teeth and give catch lights in both eyes. So, but it's a nice portrait. Again, the background, I would maybe even blur it out even more. I know it's blurred, but it's like some of that texture kind of takes your eye away a little bit from the subject, or darken it down a little bit maybe. But you got a lot of detail in the shadow area, which is good. It's hard to do when you have black on black. It's something that's very difficult. And also depending on when you have light coming across the face with hair, when it comes from an angle like you have it, you have that shadow on the face. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Right there, it's okay. But again, it's taken my eye away, from maybe the impact of looking at her eyes. I'd really like to see that, like Janice said, a catch light or lighter. And for people that don't know what a catch light is, by the way, if you're a landscape photographer, it's a highlight, it's a reflection of the light source. Some people nowadays you do it artificially, you can do it, but for the most part, it's the reflection of the light source. It could be the sun, or it could be, artificial light, or whatever it might be. And the size of it, in the old days, you looked at a magazine, you could tell how a fashion shot of a Vogue was, how it was lit, because you could see the catch light. They weren't retouched out, but now everything's retouched. But it's the highlight right in the center of the eye, or around the edge of the pupil, so it lights it up, and it really, that becomes that bright part that we talked about earlier, where your eye, you go right to the eyes first, because it's a really bright light. But otherwise, yeah, it's a nice portrait. I think it could have a little bit more impact with just a few little modifications. Maybe you have other shots when you were shooting this too. And if your head was to the other side, it would have been, again, the lighting would be totally different. But yeah, it's a nice portrait.
Thank you, judges. We'll move on to the next image. I would imagine this might be in sports. So Janet?
Yeah, you caught the moment, right? When he's about to, well, I'm not, is he catching the ball? Yeah, I think, for an action shot, it's hard. It's hard to get, it's hard to light inside the gym. It's hard to, get all that. So being that, you have your limitations of what you can do in a gym. So you have this image. Some of the things I would do to improve this image, I'm not sure I'm getting what's happening with the ball. So that might be, storytelling, maybe one where, he's about to grab the ball, because my first thought was volleyball, and I'm like, wait, it's basketball. So, maybe think of what the purpose is of what the game is and what the action typically is for the sport. I would like to see this image cropped in. I think it's okay to see the spectators, but I don't think we need as many of them. I think if this is about him, I think we could crop it in closer. Again, we talked about dodging and burning, and that's just something we do as photographers. We look at light, and we're working with light, and that's what the story, that's how we tell the story. One of the ways we tell the story. And so again, we talk about vignette a lot, but bringing that, it just brings your eye into the subject. So, cropping a little bit, burning in the edges. Yeah, a little more contrast on him to give it a little bit more punch. Yeah, I think that would be a few things to start with.
Seth?
Yeah, it jumps right out at you. It's amazing. You do catch where that ball is in relation to his face, and the concentration on his face is great. Really good timing on that. The technical parts, again, it's just like Janet said. It really needs to, again, burn in those edges and darken that whole floor. Darken the shoe. Really get the focus. Into him. I look at the Gatorade in the back and the person's shirt in the back, whatever's going on there. There's nothing happening in the back, and they're kind of just sitting there. So it takes away from the impact of him on the floor. Maybe you crop some of those people out, or do something with them, or really darken them down. Would be kind of neat, But I think that the overall, those midtones there. This is probably shot of it, 1600, 2400, 3200 ISO. It's hard to get, these gyms are so dark. But you don't need to, just because you have that, you don't need to lighten it that much. You know, you can still keep it dark and moody and impactful. Yeah, I love that intensity that's going on there. Really captured that split second moment, which is, it's hard to do to capture these. That's a unique moment, obviously. That's not a normal, thing to see in basketball. Like, typically you can see somebody jumping on the hoop or whatever, not getting each other, not falling down and whatever he was doing. But yeah, it's interesting. Just again, tighten it up, but technically with some dodging and burning and everything else that we said earlier.
Right. Thank you. Move on to the next image. So I would imagine this might be perhaps black and white scenic. Seth, let's start with you.
Yeah, I love the way that S curve there. S curve is always great to have. You kick along, have that, your eye goes right into that river stream, right to the buildings, and the frost on the leaves and tree and the mountain. I'm not sure what's happening on the right-hand side with that tree, with the edge of the leaves on there. But yeah, it's interesting. Again, you are looking all over the image, which is good. So you're kind of seeing what's happening. There's that building on the right, though, and I know really not much you could do unless just you physically move to the right and knock that building off. I just don't know what it is. It's like it's a barn or another house or whatever. So it's kind of, it's taken away from that a little bit, and you really can't crop it out because you crop too much of that tree. So it does have a lot of impact. I like it. Again, maybe darken a little bit of certain areas, just to, again, bring your eye to more of the center of focus. Because I'm losing what the center of focus is. I assume it's the trees, the river, and then that one building in front. But yeah, it's a nice image. I like it.
Ev, your thoughts?
It's great composition. I really like the leading line with the S-curve brook leading us right to the buildings, right in between the trees. So a great composition, really draws us into that part of the photo. But I agree that maybe differentiate the subject a little bit more. There's a lot of brightness going on throughout the photo, and obviously it's snow and you need that, but you can take that down a little bit. The crop on the trees bothers me a little bit. It was just slightly cropped off. If that image is there, I'd like to see just the full tree. But otherwise, I really like the composition on this.
Janet, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, that I was going to say the trees. That was the one thing I felt like I want to see more. Just like, bring that. I would like. Yeah, I feel like the crop. It's one of those like it's just cropped. But yeah, it's very interesting to look at. I see a story. I see it like an illustrate. I just see it in a book. I'm seeing a story. So I like that aspect of it a lot.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next image. This looks like it would probably be color photographs of people, formal. So Janet, we'll start with you.
I love this. I mean, this immediately, you can tell the maker knows their lighting. They know what they're doing. There's the focus, on the face, on the subject's face, the way the light hits her perfectly, but yet we have the blue tones all around. The pose is wonderful. I like that, her eyes are following her nose. Like whenever you look off, I mean, there might be a slight bit off, but anytime you turn the person away from an image, you want the eyes to go with the nose. The maker did that wonderfully. I love the little hand coming back, holding the feathers. It might be a fan. And I can't see what the object is in the front, but I like the placement where, you see her face and you're down to the object and, you go down to the dress. And this is where when we talk about vignetting and dodging and burning, where there's still some detail in the background. I like that there's almost a smoky feel to it. There's one little hot spot on the lower left that I keep going to. So that would be the only thing I would say, burn that little spot in. But the way the dress fades, you can see the light, the blue, and then it fades down to the gray, down to the black. I'm okay that I don't see all the details down in the black, but I don't mind that because there's so much detail in the center and throughout the feathers. And I don't mind that the feathers are cropped at the top. I think that just brings you into the image, and if they're just soft and they leave the frame beautifully. I just think this is overall really well done.
Seth, let's have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it's super well done. You know, with lighting, it's just perfect. You know, it's getting details in each textures is not that easy. You know, and to bring them out with the vignetting of the light and you know using grid spots and other forms of of light modifiers in the face. And by the way, you see what there's the catch lights. If you look in her eyes, you can see the catch lights that we've been talking about. Yeah, the colors, the tone, everything. It's just just super well done. Yeah, can't say anything else. It's great.
Ev, anything you'd like to add?
Just agree that it's a great image, incredibly lit, great colors, face is nice and sharp, really well done. Great image.
All right, thank you. Move on to this next image. I would imagine that this might be under the flowers category.
Or macro, but macro too.
Oh, could be macro. Jeff, Ev?
It's a nice image. I like the colors. It's just really soft. And I don't know if this would translate well into print. I wonder if it's cropped in a lot, which is creating that. But other than that, yeah, it's a nice image.
Seth?
Yeah, I like the idea. I could see the vision of the photographer. I could see, you saw this beautiful pattern in nature, and water, and the colors and the tones. There's a few technical things. There's a red in the top left-hand corner, which there's some things that aren't necessary, and I'd almost want to see just the design in the center, again, almost like a square, except for and taking out that other leaf on the bottom left, the yellow. Have that circular pattern, zooming in even more on some of that, and then making that the really center of focus. Because right now, between the light, you have light on top, and it's flat in the other parts, so you're not. My eye's not focusing on where it should be. I mean, I can see this to be really, really dynamic. If again, you highlighted, Dodge and burn again the center part of it, and really make that pop and darken around the edges again, cropping a little bit tighter, and that would really be dynamic.
Right, Janet?
Yeah, I think everything said. I think it's tough to do the bullseye again, where there's something right in the center. I would just suggest playing with the crop, either doing that where it is centered and a square crop, or maybe playing with, rule of thirds, having the main focal point being in one of the, upper left third, changing the crop so that your focal point is in the thirds, or angling it a little bit. I would just play with that. I mean, I like that there's 3 elements of the purple where you're, the odd number. I like that. I like that each corner has the little pocket, so there's some symmetry or flow. But I would play with the crop a little bit to add drama, because right now it's kind of dead center. And then, yeah, that would be my suggestion.
All right.
If you have more of the flower, move it around.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to be moving on. So I don't know whether this might be waterscapes, or it could be people informal. So Ev, let's start with you.
Nice photo. It's very simple, but very minimalist, but really well done with the 2 subjects and the light coming in from the side. The lighting is nice. Good lines created from the water. It's one of those images that's just simple but impactful, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Janet, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the feel and the tones. I feel that we have 2 subjects, so I would suggest picking one. I'm bouncing between the 2, and then the shadow of the bottom one kind of gets cut off, and then there's the rocks down below. So I'm really wanting to focus on the surfer. So, seeing that as a panel, like eliminating the bottom half and just do the top section, a panoramic is where I'm seeing, maybe adding contrast, adding some more vignette, but that's kind of where I'm feeling this image should go personally.
Interesting take, Janet. Seth, anything to add?
Yeah, if you just crop the surfer and you crop it as a panorama, that would have impact on its own as a very graphic image with these really beautiful lines going in and out, which is it. So you actually do have like 3 photographs here or more in one image, which is kind of fun. I mean, I do kind of like the two. Normally, I agree with Janet in terms of, I mean, you can definitely make an impactful photograph with cropping just each individual. But it kind of works for me where you're bringing, it's almost like a story going on. Like here's somebody that was, in the boat, and then this guy, he's kind of like either, you can't tell which direction he's going, but either going toward him or away from him back down the shore. And that little shadow, normally that would bug me because it's going out of the frame there, but I kind of like it. It helps my eye because it's so bright in the left-hand corner that my eye keeps going to that left-hand side, and that kind of pulls me back in by looking at that. It's a different composition, which is good. I mean, it doesn't follow the rules, which is a good thing, I think, in this image. I mean, I think it's fun. It's fun. It's got a lot of things going on with it, and it's so much potential of, like I say, cropping in so many different ways. Really, you could do a lot with this image. I do like the way it is now. I mean, it's maybe the highlights are a little bright, but it'd be nice if there was a little more brightness on the right-hand side instead of doing dodging. Burning, do the opposite, lighten it a little bit, just to cause my eye to balance a little bit more with the brightness of the top left. But it's fun. It's interesting.
Thank you. Moving on to the next image. So I would imagine this might be one of the seasons under landscapes. So Ev, let's start with you.
It's a very nice, calming image. Great tones to keep that calming feel of it. Great lines created from this must probably Badwater Basin, I'm guessing. Pretty sharp from front to back, sharp enough where it definitely works. Good composition. I like it.
Seth, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like it's nice and soft, against the harshness of Death Valley or wherever this is. I mean, it's just, like I say, it's probably Death Valley, but it's it's pleasant, it's soft, it's got nice tones. And sometimes people do focus stacking to get sharp all the way through. But I like the fact that it does fade, toward the back a little bit that way, because it adds to the softness and the lower contrast in the back. It's a nice and a nice landscape.
All right, thank you. Janet, anything to add?
Just that I like where the maker took the photo, like with the leading lines kind of coming in and the perspective, it just draws you further and further in. So I think they did a great choice on that, on the cropping.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next image. So this could possibly be one of the seasons, but it could also possibly be maybe night. But that could be possibly cityscape also. So Seth, let's start with you.
It's interesting. It has a lot of interest in it. As a graphic image, the design of it. I don't know if we need as much sky, in there. I know that obviously that caught your attention, a beautiful sunset or sunrise or whatever, the sky being, but to me, it's not as necessary because the focus is on, this everything going in the foreground in the bridge. That negative space on the left-hand side, I'm not, I haven't, I don't know if it's won me over yet, and the blur of those plants, because you're using proper, well, I don't know if it's a long exposure, but it's out of focus or versus blur. I can't tell on the top left. So that's kind of taking away a little bit from there. Now you might see more detail than we're seeing right now on the foreground part. But I think that this can be probably cropped a little bit. And in a way, it's hard. It's hard one to crop. But I like the dynamic. I like the silhouette. I like the graphicness of it. Those are always fun to do. It might be one of those things where you could take different parts of it and make it, things work too. But the shape is interesting. Even though there's that negative space on the left, kind of matches the shape of the water going in. So that's why I'm battling with that one. But yeah, I like the concept. I like the vision. Just something, I'm not sure what it is that needs to be done with that. I think that left side a little bit, this is heavy for me.
All right, Ev?
I like the concept as well. I like the lines created from the bridges. But I agree with that left side, and I'm not sure either. It just kind of looks like a bit of a smudge on my computer. And I don't know where we could take that either. But since most of the image seems to be silhouetted, maybe just stick with the silhouette, and maybe if we could get some of that out of there. But otherwise, nice colors, nice tones in the sky. Good image.
Janet, anything you'd like to add?
Just, yeah, I would be curious if you did pull the shadows. I agree that everything's a silhouette. So like, the lower right, I like silhouette, but I wonder, since we can see the water and the sky, I'm just wondering if we pulled shadows, if we had some light in the foreground, if that would, because I feel like the same, what you guys said with cropping. I think that I wouldn't like that bridge, the peak of the back bridge would be too far to the left. I like the placement. So it would be a tough one to crop. And if you cropped it up, then you lose, the lower right. So I would just be curious if we pull the shadows out of that darkness in the bottom, because it is kind of a trap, it's an eye trap. It's like the big darkness. So I would suggest pulling out the shadows and seeing if it changed the impact of the image. Otherwise, I love everything else.
And by the way, and one more comment on this too, like if you're out there playing and in this kind of situation, I think a long exposure would be really interesting with this too. I mean, obviously I'm not saying you could do it in post, but something in the future, do both a shot like this with a high shutter speed, and then something with a really long, even like a 30 seconds, 60 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and you get the movement of the clouds and the really soft water. This would be really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether this might be a spring picture in color landscapes or all things mechanical. So Janet, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I love the colors and the idea. I love looking at the car. I think the only thing that's sticking out, and I'm sure Ev and Seth can talk more about the technical aspect, is just that the flowers are blocking the car. Like, I really want to just focus on that car. And I like that there's a foreground, but I think having the big flowers in the front, like my eye is fighting, like, what am I looking at? Am I supposed to look at the flowers, or do you want me to see the car? So, again, center of interest. I like that the makers, I can tell, being really creative, like thinking outside the box, not just taking a picture of the car. So I see that there's thought there, but maybe refining the angle so that the flowers don't take over the subject of the car.
Ev, your thoughts?
The flowers actually work for me. The car is a very interesting subject, center cropped, and the flowers just slightly kind of frame it and lead your eye towards it. It kind of just works that car that shouldn't be in this nature space work with this nature space. So for me personally, that works. And yeah, I like the image a lot. I like everything else. Seems some of the stuff in the background, I don't know if we could possibly take that out, just a little distracting. It makes you wonder how much you're in the city or how much you're not in nature. But other than that, yeah, well done image.
Seth, you'd like to add anything?
Yeah, I actually would like this even more as a panorama, cropped right above the car with that, even if you have that one stem coming out there, cropping up the top of that flower, the top of the tallest one. And then and right in the center, keep it where it is. I like that. And even the flowers out of focus, maybe if it was even more shallow at the field, it's actually, a 2.8 or something, or, 1.8 and then very blur those out. I actually do like the blur, but even more blur I think would be even kind of neater. But as a horizontal, because again, I'm competing. When I first saw this, I was like, oh yeah, it's a cool car. Because I like photographing antique cars myself. But the sky, it just totally competes with it. And just because you have a nice, fun sky doesn't mean you have to have it in that photograph, unless it's, more about the sky. So I think that takes away the sky. I know that the only thing I like about the sky is the fact, the colors tie in with the flowers, which I assume is probably your intent because you want the yellow and the yellow. But I still think with that red, or the maroon or the rust of that car, along with a panoramic crop right above it, I think would, kind of really make a dynamic shot.
All right, thank you.
Before we go on to the next image, we're going to do a few more. We're actually winding down, and in the last 15 minutes, this went by really fast.
It did.
Now's the time, if you have any questions for our judges for our brief Q&A at the end, now is the time to post your questions in the YouTube chat so that we can address them if there are any. Next one.
So I might imagine that this could possibly be an informal people in color photographs. So Seth, let's start with you.
So is that a spaceship? That was my first tip, which is cool. It has that spaceship kind of feel, and she's running away from the aliens or something like that. It's interesting. There's interest in between the clouds and her coming down. Again, technically, it's very flat, which is surprising for something like this. It's just overexposed in the cloud. I think it needs a little more contrast. The blues, when the foreground is a little bit flat. When you're looking at again in your whatever processing software, you gotta look at that histogram and make sure the highlights and the shadows, and there's just change that to like an S curve or something, to get a little more impact. Maybe a little bit vignetting to focus the attention on there. It's a fun shot. Again, I made me laugh. So that's a good thing.
All right, Janet, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think with every, image we take, because it did have impact, the cloud and then her, but then I want to know, the story, what is the purpose of the image? And if it was a fun shot, maybe having her do something that's pointing at the cloud or holding the cloud, or, that's where I want to go. What is the story with the cloud and her walking down? So that's where I'm going. I think it's a neat capture. I think it was a fun day. Yeah, but more story, like purpose and story is where I'm wanting to know, like what's happening here, and what should we feel, or what's the intent of the image is what I'm curious about. But looks like it was a fun day anyway.
Ev, anything
It's
you'd
nice.
like to add?
It's a nice image. I like the lenticular cloud, and the lenticular cloud is obviously should be the focus of the image. It's the most interesting thing in the image. So I don't like that she has her back to it, that she's walking away from it. I know it's become kind of an Instagram cliche, but if you could have her turn around, just looking at the most interesting thing of this photo, I think that would be more of an impactful image to me.
So is this a thing? Is this a thing we're supposed to know? Like, is that
The
like,
Instagram
is
cliche?
there,
Really?
yeah, like, is this something that's, oh, okay. Seth, are we too old for this? What the heck?
All right, judges.
Okay, I think we might have time for more. There was one question in chat. Are image titles given to judges during first round? No, there was no preview of the images or titles. All of these images you could give them for the first time here. So I hope that answers your question. Next.
All right, Ev, let's start with you. And I imagine that this photo would probably be in one of the seasons.
That's a nice image. It's simple. The crop, maybe I don't know, on the bottom where you get a little bit of this road here and cutting off some of those reeds. Maybe you could change that crop a little bit, make it a little more interesting. Maybe cut out some of the sky with that crop. But yeah, otherwise it's nice, clean image, not incredibly impactful, but still nice, clean image.
All right, Seth, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm trying to decide what's the focus. Like, what was it that you as a photographer were trying to relate to us, or what were you trying to capture yourself that you saw? Was it the reflection in the water? Was it, is it the trees, is it the reeds? Yeah, I don't have that center of focus. It's a nice image. It's I don't know what to do with it. The horizon doesn't seem straight. Again, sometimes those are optical illusions that would drive me crazy. Try to get straight horizons, but I think that I think that if you crop that into the trees, almost get rid of the sky, tilt it a little bit more, focusing on those reeds, like also get rid of that right-hand corner. That can make it a little more interesting, where your eyes going around the lake or the waterbed, and you're going from the reeds so you're looking at the textures. So the textures can be the focus of this: the texture of the reeds, texture of the trees, the reflection of the water, and the waves or the ripples in the water. Those textures could be a subject matter in themselves. But right now, because it's a little bit farther back, and it's the way it's cropped and the horizon and so forth, I don't find that center of interest. Play around with that. Play around with cropping and stuff like that, and see what happens. A lot of times, cropping in, cropping things out really makes a big difference in a photograph.
All right, Janet, do you have anything to add?
I was just thinking of what Seth earlier with making something a black and white, when it's, I would, that could be something fun to do, and the crop as well. I agree. Straightening and cropping and then playing around with, because it's hard to get an image at this time of day that has any kind of mood or feel. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah,
Okay.
black and white.
Very good suggestions.
I want to circle back to the question that was posted in the chat. Maybe I reading it again. Maybe when you ask, are image titles given to judges? If you're referring to the actual judging of the traditional fair, where we have the tier 1 and tier 2, maybe that's what you're referring to. If that's your question, in judging, you can request or look at the title. Having judged myself, that doesn't always come into play. Like there's usually a specific question that a judge will ask what the title is. It's not something that is right in front of you.
No, not typically. Although I do see that in documentary photos, sometimes the judges will ask what the title is, because that might help them kind of see the story.
Mm-hmm. And that has happened where perhaps Seth is when we were judging together, when we asked for a title on a specific image, and that actually helped us to understand the storytelling. So titles are important when you're submitting for competition. Don't disregard the importance of the title, although the judges don't always see them. But as the maker, you should put thought into the meaningful nature of your titles. Okay, next.
All right. I would surmise that this picture would probably be in black and white nature. So let's start with you, Seth.
Yeah, I like the impact. These the composition is interesting because it's a little close to the right, and the rocks and the trees. Again, there might be a little bit over processing, with this. You could see on the edges of the mountain range, where you have that glow on the edge, so that, usually that's in the conversion process to black and white. The subject matter itself has enough impact by itself that it doesn't need sometimes to be, again, that overly processed, a little muted down, I think would be nice. But I mean, I like the composition, I like the design. There's a competition between those clouds and and the tree, so is that a bristlecone pine or what is that? Anybody know?
Looks like it could be bristlecone, yeah.
So, you have the this impact of that, but it's kind of interesting. It has almost a spiritual feeling of the top of that going up towards the clouds, so I do like that. I just, like I say, it's almost, again, like the sky. It's actually, the bottom is fine, and it's just the sky just seems a little too much, a little overly done. If that was a little softer, I think too, it would just have that more, Zen kind of feeling to it.
Ev, anything you'd like to add?
Just mostly the same stuff. Very interesting subject, very interesting tree. So I like that part of it, very impactful part of it. But yeah, the sky is definitely a little overdone. You can see the halos around the trees and the mountains, and it's also adding some artifacts and noise into the clouds in the sky. So you can probably tone that down a bit. You don't really need it.
All right. Janet, any thoughts?
Just, I really do like the placement of the tree. Like Seth said, I'm feeling like something that could almost be another image in itself too. Like I'm so drawn by the way the tree and the clouds like form that shape and how they feel connected. Yeah. Would either ever, Seth, burn in the bottom at all, or like burn in the edges?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to bring it in a little bit.
Yeah, Ansel Adams, used to, use tons of little bleaches and different techniques that he'd go on each little branch and leaf and whatever it might be and bring out little highlights too in the trees, and that's something, that can also, bring that up a little bit more. There's a little blocking too on the left-hand side of those lower bushes, the blacks, they're blocking up. So again, it's just, that's overly contrast, it's almost like, again, either the clarity, sometimes overdoing the clarity, dehaze, or structure, and the other different brands, and everybody has their own name for them. But that's usually what does that. Those kind of techniques when it's not necessary. Try to hold the shadow. And these kind of landscapes, in black and white especially, it's more important that you hold the shadow detail. Just for again, it's just one of those things, because we have the technology now. We have, when I started out with using Kodachrome, slide film and so forth, our dynamic range is like, 5 stops or something. Now we got like 13, 14 stops, 16 stops of space. There really isn't, reason not to be able to get that shadow detail. So in an image like this, and that doesn't mean you can't do it intentionally. You can't darken it to your own shadow detail artistically. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But in a shot like this, it seems like I'm kind of missing the shadow detail in some of these black areas. But otherwise, yeah, it's got impact. I would say just tone down that sky a little bit, and I think it'll have a lot of impact.
I'm sorry, I'm getting kind of tired. Have all 3 of you commented on this picture already?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Before we close down, I just want to share some feedback from Arturo. Great feedback from the judges. I am learning a lot from everyone's images. Awesome advice. It's fantastic to have 3 different perspectives from the 3 amazing judges. Thank you. So we are almost to our end, and we apologize we weren't able to cover all the images, but just to close out, what I'd like to do is just show what we have left, and if the judges, I hope the thumbnails are big enough. Let me make them a little bit bigger. If the judges, if as I scroll through any of these images, if there are any that any of you would like to discuss in the context of closing advice for submitting to competition, are there any here that as a final image you'd like to talk about or highlight? And
yeah, this is interesting. As you scroll, and for people that are the viewers looking at this, it's good to see, like, as you're scrolling, what jumps out, what really impacts you, what's, you could see that center of focus, like your eyes focused. Stop right there for a second, stop right, go back, go scroll down a little bit, go back to the other way. And right, yeah, like right there, let's say, hold that even. So when you look at these images here, again, like where does your eye go in the different images? Which ones, immediately say something to you or whatever. So these are good examples because they're all different. And some have more center of focus than others and more impact. Now you can scroll back up. I just. I like those landscapes there too. Really nice. Go stop there for a second. That one on the left, that's interesting because there's close up with design. That one, yeah.
This one?
Yeah, I just want to see that for a second. Bigger. Yeah, I like that. I like the softness of that. Here's because there's inherent contrast. There's always two types of contrast. You got the contrast from the light, but then you have the inherent contrast of the subject itself. So that has some interesting features going on there. I like the shallow depth of field on that one. It's really interesting. You could say it's flat, but I kind of like it for this image. That's why sometimes we say something's too flat. We don't want everything to be overly contrasty. Some things work when they're flat. Some things work when they're contrasty. But I like the color tonality in this too. It's really. I think that's a really interesting shot.
Okay. Janet or Ev, any others you'd like to point out?
Not really for me, other than that that shot of in the top right corner really stands out to me. That one there.
Why?
It's just very impactful. I can't really even put my finger on it, but there's something about it that I love. Very interesting. It just stood out while you were scrolling to me.
It kind of feels like there's this aura around her with the light.
Yeah.
Lens flare, most likely for post-production, but it actually works for the pose and the that image itself. Yeah, it works for that. Here it is. We've always tried to do what we could to get rid of the lens flare, but then now we can add it. So technology is great.
Okay, well, thank you. Before Lois closes us out with some information about the finale of our photo show for this year, we really just want to thank the judges for your quality of commentary. You guys really gave us a lot of clear, practical, actionable advice, which was our goal, to help our makers look at images more critically. You really covered many, if not most, of the common challenges that makers have when preparing for competition. So that's impressive. Thank you for judges Janet, Ev, and Seth for your excellent quality of commentary. And
yeah, I thank all of the photographers for submitting pictures to us for consideration for the image review. It can be difficult to share your work and to get feedback, but I think this was really a really great event, and I'm grateful to all of you for submitting pictures to us. And for our 3 esteemed award-winning judges and commentators, thank you very much for sharing your evening and your expertise with us. And we look forward to collaborating with you again soon.
Thanks. Thank you guys, and thanks everybody for submitting. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do this in person.
That's what we are hoping for. And before we close off, we just want to let you know that the photo department, we do have our final 2 events coming up on this coming Saturday on July 3rd from 2:30 to 4:30, and from 5 to 7, we're going to have our final 2 photo shootouts. where you come to the fair, you show up at the Homegrown Fun stage, and where you'll sign up, and then at the appointed time, we'll give you a topic to shoot for. You have up to 1 hour to take pictures here at the fair based on the topic that we give you. And we have 3 professional photographers that are going to be taking a look at your photographs. You can hear some of their comments, and they will select winners, and we'll be handing out ribbons, and the top winners will be receiving gift cards and special prizes from George's Camera and Nelson Photo, which we know are worth, I think, about $200 just for the first place winners. And that's for each competition. So we have over $400 worth of prizes between the 2 competitions this coming Saturday. So we hope to see you back here at the fair in a couple of days. And until then, we hope you have a wonderful summer. We'll see you soon.
Oh, and before we close, if we could just let the judges, if our makers want to find more of your work or learn more about your processes, what can they do to contact you? I know, Ev, you have a gallery in La Jolla. You want to tell us quickly about that?
The gallery in La Jolla on Fay Avenue, and also my website, san diego-landscapes.com. You can see a lot of my work and just some more information about me.
Janet?
It's janetbark.com, and that's where my portrait work is. But if you also connect with ppsdc.com, Professional Photographers of San Diego County.com, you can see some of the events we're doing and reach out to me. Currently, it's president@ppsdc.com, even just to find out more about what we do and come and watch our competitions, because it'll help prepare you for the fair next year. So you can sit in and watch for free, live judging as well. So that's a great a great resource that we have in San Diego for everyone.
And Seth, how can people find you?
They can find me at SethMayerFineArt.com and Instagram at Seth.Mayer.photography. That should do it.
All right. Well, thank you to all of our panelists, and we hope to see you back here at the fair next year.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.